this concept of quote unquote zombie cells.
Yeah.
Urolithin A can really help recycle these malfunctioning, dead, not good cells anymore. People are like already taking the urolithin A, maybe the NAD plus, but they haven't got the vitamin D. They haven't got the magnesium. They have insufficiencies all over the place that haven't been fixed. Nothing's going to help you if you're up till 2 a.m. streaming Netflix, eating a bag of potato chips on the couch. No supplement stack is going to fix that.
Okay, I think we should answer the question, can you age backwards? I'm seeing it everywhere on social. There's a huge push right now for like kind of a root cause, health approach. And so people don't want to just say, oh, I'm starting to feel weaker. What do I take? Oh, my skin feels a little more lax. What do I take? People are like, how do I stop or reverse aging right now? So can you do it?
So the short answer to that is no. And I think this we all want to stop aging. We don't want to get, but we're going to get older.
Yeah.
I think that the better question to ask is, how do I increase my health span versus my lifespan? And what I mean by that is, we're all going to live, let's say we all live 100 years. I'd like to live 99 of those years super healthy versus living a lot longer but being unhealthy for 20 of those years. And so that's when I think about the term lifespan versus health span, I want my health span to be longer, not necessarily just my lifespan. And I think this is when people think about aging backwards. That's what it is. How do I stay healthy for longer where I'm not dealing with these chronic diseases or these other limitations that come up with natural aging?
Yeah, 100%. And I think I see a lot, especially from people in, let's say, like 20s to 40s that are posting a lot right now saying like, I do this so that at 80 I can do this, and then it'll clip to a very fit 80-year-old repping 10 pull-ups or things like that. And so people are really interested on sort of how they slow that aging process on a cellular level. How do they really target that root cause? And so something that comes up a lot is the mitochondria, which we've all heard in school. Is the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And so I think one of the hallmarks of aging is kind of mitochondrial decline. And there's a lot of research coming out that even links this decline to certain diseases or certain symptoms that people might feel later in life. And there's also research coming out at the same time that some of these supplements or some of these foods might actually kind of slow this process. And I think there's a couple approaches that these supplements take that we can talk about some of our favorites of what we've seen. One of them is protecting your existing mitochondria. One of them is helping to recycle damaged mitochondria. And then the third is helping your body produce new mitochondria. And so these all target like kind of a slightly different approach. And one of the ones I think that we've talked about a bit that I find really interesting is urolithin A. So kind of what's your take on urolithin A, and what do you think about it?
So urolithin A is a really interesting one because it, what's funny is when everyone wants to know what's the natural food that urolithin A comes from, and the one that always comes to mind is pomegranates. People love pomegranates, they're fun. But what's interesting is 40% of people cannot actually make urolithin A in their bodies. That has to be, if you're going to get it, you have to actually supplement it. It's actually difficult to know whether or not you're one of those people. Supplementation is the general recommendation at this point. And what urolithin A ultimately does is it primarily helps, as you mentioned, kind of recycle or get rid of these old malfunctioning mitochondria and essentially create room for new ones to be produced. You hear this, one of the terms that you hear come up a lot is this concept of quote unquote zombie cells. Cells that are still around. They're not providing beneficial effects, but they're not dead, and they're actually just creating levels of inflammation in the body, and that's kind of what they're producing. And urolithin A can really help recycle these malfunctioning, dead, not good cells anymore, that ultimately help kind of level the playing field and create room for new mitochondria to be created.
Yeah, and I think kind of tagging along to that approach, another one I see a lot is glutathione, which I think is really interesting because a lot of people think, oh, I need glutathione. It's helping kind of protect my cells from the stress. It's helping kind of protect my mitochondria from that decline. I should just supplement glutathione. But I think when it comes to supplementation, it's also important to know how to actually provide it to your body in a more bioavailable form. So with glutathione, a lot of traditional delivery forms aren't actually that bioavailable. But if you take glycine and NAC together, it kind of provides your body with this building block to help produce more glutathione. And so I think when it comes to like, can you age backward? What can you take? it helps to really understand sort of how, like, what's happening in your body. So when it comes to urolithin A, like you said, if you're not a converter, this can help provide your body with exactly what it needs to sort of help recycle damaged mitochondria. If you're trying to protect what you have, don't take glutathione, take glycine and NAC together, things like that. And I think moving beyond kind of what there's a little more evidence for, we see a lot of emerging supplements that we see them start to pop up in the marketing, and they say, oh, this is what's going to help your body produce new mitochondria, or this is helping your body clear all damaged cells. But the evidence isn't quite there yet. So I want to talk a little bit about what we've seen with like PQQ, Spermidine, our thoughts on CoQ10. Kind of what are your favorites right now when it comes to what's evidence-backed, and what do you think is promising?
So you mentioned, we talked about Urolithin A. I like Urolithin A a lot. I take Urolithin A every day. CoQ10 I also like a lot. That's kind of like the OG in the space. CoQ10's been around for a long time.
It's been the longevity supplement for like decades.
It absolutely has. I think it really helps. And there's plenty of data showing that it does help improve like the term that the umbrella term is mitochondrial health. Without getting into like deep details, like there are plenty of studies that show that CoQ10 can help with mitochondrial health, and it also helps with what is probably the ultimate hallmark of aging, which is inflammation. At the end of all of this, like damaged mitochondria, just a free radical production that we hear, antioxidants, all this stuff, it all comes down to this concept of inflammation. Inflammation causes stress on every system in the body, every organ in the body. And so that's another area where CoQ10 kind of shines, is its anti-inflammatory properties. Fish oil is another good example that kind of falls into that category. We don't think about fish oil as a longevity supplement, but we want to target root cause. We don't necessarily want to target, we can target mitochondria, but what's causing mitochondria to fail more than often? Inflammation.
No, 100%. And I think it's also, it's interesting that because these new shiny buzzwords, come along, like Spermidine, for example, is getting a lot of hype right now. And I think there's a lot of promising, kind of mechanistic research or even animal research coming out that potentially can help your body clear those damaged cells. But as you mentioned before, it's like, why are you accumulating those damaged cells? Is it chronic stress? Is there something else going on? Is there some sort of like insufficiency that, would be helpful to correct? I think starting with basics, there's a lot of evidence with omega-3s, vitamin D3, some of methylated vitamin Bs, some of the real basics when it comes to kind of protecting your cells from that stress and slowing decline. So if you were building an anti-aging supplement protocol, where would you start? What would be the foundation? And then what would be the fun ones you add?
Well, that's a good question. So more than I can count, people are like already taking the Urolithin A, maybe the NAD+, you mentioned Spermidine, but they haven't got the vitamin D. They haven't got the magnesium. They have insufficiencies all over the place that haven't been fixed. We have to start with the basics. If you are not at a basic level, getting proper nutrition, proper nutrients, proper supplements, you're not really going to fix, think about that as your tree trunk. So make sure your vitamin D is many people are walking around deficient in vitamin D. Magnesium, very, very similar. Fix those elements first, keep your foundation. And then for me, my Urolithin A right now is my big experiment. And I like to kind of pick one at a time to mess with. And I think it's really important to know, like, you're not going to take Urolithin A for a week and be like, I'm going to live forever. Like, this is, I think, one of the things that is so interesting and almost frustrating about this space is we don't know. We absolutely do not know if taking Urolithin A or NAD+ or NAC and glycine is going to help us live for 20 healthy more years. We do not know. And the reason we don't know this is just because we haven't had the time. Urolithin A hasn't even been looked at as a supplement for a long enough amount of time. And so we need trials and data. And whereas something like CoQ10, we do have 20, 30, 40 years of data on. We do not have that for the newer age kind of longevity supplements that are out. So we're kind of looking at what they're purported to do, what the early trials have shown, and extrapolating to where we think they could go. No, that's a great point. And I want to touch on one of the ones that you just mentioned that reminds me a little bit of glutathione when it comes for just people wanting to take the direct compound for effects, but really sometimes the precursors are where it's important to start. NAD+ is getting a lot of hype right now, and I see supplements all over. I see NR, NMN, I see NAD+ directly, and people are always asking kind of, what do I take? What does it do? Why do I care in the longevity space?
So can you walk us through it a little bit?
So it's a little complicated, but it's very important. The first thing I would do, if you're taking an NAD plus supplement, the first thing I would do is turn that bottle around and see what it is on the label.
Yeah.
Because almost always in the front it'll say NAD plus, but on the back it's going to say one of three things. Almost always. It's going to say NAD plus, it's going to say NR, nicotinamide riboside, or it's going to say NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide. It's going to say one of those three things. NAD plus generally does not work.
Okay.
The reason is we take it, our body's going to metabolize it, we're going to excrete it. It's not actually going to reliably increase NAD plus levels.
Yeah.
Now there are new age deliveries. We see things like liposomal delivery that are being applied to this. That data is promising but still early.
Yeah.
If we really want to increase NAD plus levels, and the reason for this is that the theory is that as we age, NAD plus decreases. That theory is being challenged pretty heavily right now. But if our NAD plus levels are low, NAD plus helps with mitochondrial health, anti-inflammatory properties, etc. General longevity, as we like to use that buzzword.
Yeah.
We want to be able to increase NAD plus levels in the body to fix that. I said NAD plus doesn't work, so we have to look at, as the word you mentioned, precursors, things that will ultimately increase NAD plus inside the body through some sort of downstream effects.
Yeah.
Right now, whether it's NR or NMN, I don't particularly have I kind of on the fence between the two. I think either is okay.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough evidence either way to say like one is dramatically better than the other at this point. For a while, NMN wasn't even legal to be sold in the U.S. because the FDA had outruled it as more of a drug.
Yeah.
Now it's completely legal to be bought. I think we're finally starting to see some comparisons happening, but we don't have nearly enough evidence to know. But it's going to take some time. But I think either of the precursors are a sufficient use right now if you're looking to take NAD plus as a supplement.
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot, NR versus NMN, and I think I completely agree with what you said. There's evidence that they both raise NAD plus in the blood. I think NR has slightly more research right now.
It does.
Is that right? And I think some of that is probably because just funding behind NR, like there might be differential,
and because NMN was illegal.
Yeah, and because NMN was illegal.
For
Yeah, but they're both on the conversion pathway. They're both reliable ways to raise NAD plus in the blood. I also want to ask about a new study that came out that is challenging the fact that, we previously were pretty confident that NAD plus levels declined with age. It's being challenged by this study. If, let's say, NAD plus levels do not decline with age, is it still a supplement that you think is beneficial?
Yes, asterisk. Very large study just came out recently with thousands of participants that essentially, I never use the word, we don't ever use the word proven research, but pretty well established that NAD plus levels declining with age is not a guaranteed thing.
Yeah.
And not something that's just going to naturally happen. So I think that doesn't remove NAD plus from the conversation. I think it makes it a little bit more nuanced in our recommendations in the sense of you should likely go get your NAD plus levels tested. If you are low, absolutely a precursor could work. The other factor in this is that while both NR and NMN have been shown to reliably increase NAD plus levels, we don't have a lot of data showing that increasing NAD plus levels actually has downstream effects for longitudinal health.
Right.
And so we are making a lot of bets on this in a sense, or a lot of like, I'm willing to, because we also have seen safety data where just because we do take it, it's not going to hurt us, but it may not help us. So we're essentially placing a calculated bet that this is going to help us long term, but we don't know for sure. And I think it's similar for almost all of these supplements right now. Yeah,
especially these newer ones in the longevity space. I do want to hear your opinion on this, and then I'll share mine. I think when I talk on social sometimes about like these longevity supplements and what's coming out and things like that, I get a lot of questions that are, should I take all of them? Should I just stack all of them? If you were to take, let's say, 3. First, you can say whether you think it's most beneficial to take all of them. But if you were to take 3, what 3 would you pick in relation to longevity? And then I'll share mine and we'll see if they match.
That's a good question. So beneficial to take all of them is an impossible question to ask because we just don't know. We just don't know. So again, you're taking calculated bets. But I am also, I'm a bettor in this sense, right? Like I take Urolithin. So Urolithin A is high on that list for me.
Yeah.
Fish oil is my other, or one of my other ones. It's well established to help with inflammation. It's well established to help with recovery.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like I said, I think inflammation becomes one of the biggest components when it comes to longevity. And my third in this capacity, when I think about longevity, I'm going to creatine.
Nice.
And the reason I'm going to creatine is just because it is so well established to show that it helps with energy production. There's enough research to not convince me, but make me feel optimistic about the brain health component. Yeah. It's showing a lot for just general like what has become a gym supplement has now become a longevity supplement, and I think reasonably so. And if there is any supplement in this category that I think has enough data behind it to help us feel confident, I think it's creatine. So my three, my tried and true creatine, fish oil, and then my experimental would be Urolithin A.
Nice. Okay. I love those choices. I think my three right now would be Glycine NAC, because I love the research that's coming out with them together, and then Urolithin A. So I would try to protect my existing mitochondria, and I would try to recycle some of the damaged ones. However, if research comes out, more research on PQQ, I'm very interested in that, because that one has kind of emerging evidence that it might have some effect on mitochondrial biogenesis, which is basically helping your body produce new mitochondria. And then I think we've talked about a little bit that it's often paired with CoQ10. So I think that pairing together is one I have my eye on when it comes to longevity.
So along the lines of this concept of health span and lifespan and all that, one thing I see and hear a lot about is this idea of chronological and biological aging.
Yeah.
What is this?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of fun. I get my biomarkers done every 6 months, and it always tells me my biological age. And so it's almost become a game to me to see if I can move that number backwards. Which I guess in that case, maybe you can age backwards. But so your chronological age is how many years you've been alive. So that's fixed. That's constantly moving. You can't change that backward. We're only moving forward. Your biological age is the measure basically of how your cells are aging and functioning. So this has to do, you can see this based on your biomarkers, your gene expression, how you're physically functioning. It's sort of all of these things combined. But some of the things that it typically comes down to is, one, your mitochondrial health, and two, your telomeres. So I think, talk to us a little bit about, people always ask, like, I think I'm supposed to keep my telomeres long, or, like, what happens when they shorten? And people, throw around this word, but they don't often know exactly how it really relates to aging. So walk us through it a little bit there.
So think about telomeres are the little end caps on the end of cells. And when cells divide, telomeres get shorter. So think about telomeres as like the aglet on a shoelace. Yep. There's this little piece in the end that each time a cell divides, they get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. Telomeres are a very good correlate to how well we are aging. Because the more cells divide, the more cells are dying and becoming senescent or ineffective, the faster we're going to age. Telomere length is directly associated with inflammation.
Okay.
There's a 2025 analysis that looked at everything, looked at smoking, looked at eating poor foods, looked at being sedentary, and the single most powerful factor for keeping telomeres longer or being short was inflammation. And this has been shown over and over and over that low levels of inflammation can increase overall telomere length. Yeah. Why is this so important? Now, this is important because we talked about this concept of inflammation being one of the most important factors with aging in general. And so if we can reduce inflammation, we can increase telomere length, and we can ultimately improve our biological age. Right. Because when cells divide, they eventually get to a point where they can no longer divide, and they become what's called senescent. They don't divide. They're not dead, but they're not doing anything good anymore, and they turn into this quote unquote zombie cell. Yeah. So you've heard this term. Yeah, the zombie cell. I see it everywhere now. People are very concerned about their zombie cells. But I think it's led to a new area of interest when it comes to supplements, because our body typically goes through and tries to clean up these zombie cells, right? It tries to metabolize them and try to keep more healthy cells, less zombie cells. And so one of the emerging supplements that I have my eye on is Spermidine, because what it does is it essentially helps, one,
reduce blockers of cleaning up these zombie cells. And 2, it improves processes of actually being able to go through and clean them up. So it's sort of kind of removing obstacles and then also improving function. And the research is really, really early on this one. It's super mechanistic. So there's not, extremely strong or replicated human trials to be able to make any sort of definitive claim, but it is one where people have their eye on it, because in the early stages it's extremely promising. And so I think it ties in, it's almost like an upstream broader mechanism that's very similar to urolithin A. And so I think when it comes to helping us kind of reduce our biological age, healthy aging over time, we not only want to help kind of improve the health of our existing cells, but we do want to provide a space where our body can kind of clean up damaged cells and help keep that, healthy metabolic process going. And so if you were focused on longevity itself and you had, let's say, 3 tips for people on how to kind of promote healthy aging, where would you start and what would you prioritize?
So the first one, which has nothing to do with supplements whatsoever, is exercise, and specifically aerobic exercise. We can go into all the benefits of weightlifting. It's very powerful. But the single biggest factor that has reduced inflammation, improved telomere length, improved aging, cardiovascular exercise. And that is incredibly important for all things. It's going to affect every system in your body. But that is probably the one single best thing that you can do to improve longevity. From there, get your blood work done. Like I could not say it enough. Get your blood work done. Look at where you are not just deficient. Look at where you're insufficient. Look at where you're healthy but on the cusp. Where if you go to your PCP and they're not worried about it because you haven't quite crossed that threshold yet, that's not optimal.
Right.
There are a lot of ways, but you can't fix what you don't measure. And so getting your blood work done, for me, number 2, knowing, because you understand where you can improve and where you need to put those interventions. And then I think number 3 is just taking a long look at the rest of your lifestyle. Supplements are incredibly important. We all have our longevity stacks. But as I always say, nothing's going to help you if you're up till 2 a.m. streaming Netflix, eating a bag of potato chips on the couch. No supplement stack is going to fix that. And I think those are the 3 best things that you can do if you're really trying to optimize your longevity, because everything else is going to be nuanced compared to those things.
Right. And I would add on to that stress management, of just reducing stress in your life, trying to reduce inflammation in your body. I think that is an extremely important and challenging proposition for just the way that most of us live. We're waking up 8 a.m. We're going to have a giant coffee with no food in our stomach. Where you have the same reaction to an email as we would if we were like running from a lion. You know what I mean? It's like we have these constant stress triggers, and then we're not kind of helping ourselves with how we're treating our body and what our daily habits look like. And so I think outside of supplements, like you said, taking a look at your life and everything around you and trying to provide an environment that you can reduce that stress over time is one of those things that's going to compound over time when it comes to healthy aging.
Yeah, we get so caught up in how do I optimize that we often are just putting Band-Aids over a poor foundation. You can cold plunge all you want. You can get active massage all you want. But if you're not fixing the underlying foundation, none of it's going to help.
Yeah. And I do want to ask, you mentioned cardiovascular exercise. I've seen a lot about the sauna being zone 2 cardio, but you don't have to move. What do you think about that?
So the data, I love a good sauna. I'd be the first one to say I love a good sauna, but it shouldn't replace your exercise. You shouldn't say I don't have to exercise anymore if I sit in the sauna.
Zone 2 cardio in the sauna.
So we have seen plenty of research that shows that the sauna will help with blood pressure decreases, that it will raise your heart rate and things like that the same way that cardiovascular exercise would. But you're not going to get the muscular benefits. You're not going to get, you think about if you go for a run or something like that, like the benefits to your bone health that you're getting from that active exercise. There's so many other benefits that you get from exercise that you don't get from sitting, that you miss out on. You get some of the cardiovascular benefits, but you're missing out on a lot of others by skipping the exercise piece. So longevity honestly kind of makes me crazy in a sense. So we've completely lost the plot with longevity right now because everyone is talking about what's the $400 infrared thing, what mask can I wear, what cream can I use, how long should I cold plunge in sauna, but yet we leave all that and we're sucking down bags of potato chips and we're streaming shows till 2 a.m. and we are not, our diet's not optimized. We don't exercise. we are constantly looking for the quick fix in longevity. And that is, when we think about how we live longer, that is not how we live longer. We live longer by fixing the foundation. That's how we're going to just be healthy in general. And then we optimize. We see, I don't have wearables, right? Like, we see so many people that will wear the rings and the watches and they get all this data, but then they don't do anything with it. Yeah. And they just like, I need the data because I need to understand how I slept last night. I can tell you how I slept last night. If I wake up tired, I know I didn't sleep that well. I don't need a watch to tell me this. So I do think that we have gotten a little over aggressive with trying to like optimize without actually fixing the foundational pieces first.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think that I'm more of a sucker for a wellness trend than you are, for sure. And so I'm curious, of the wellness trends that we do have, which do you think are worth it? Like, which would you subscribe to?
So sauna, without a doubt.
Okay.
The sauna literature showing that it improves cardiovascular health.
Yeah.
That it can help with blood pressure. All those things. Very, very well established. Fantastic thing. It shouldn't replace exercise, but very well established. I also, so as much as I don't wear wearables, but if you are a wearable wearer and you are actively looking at that data and making changes in your life based on that data, it's very valuable. I think most people like to fill their little circles or hit their little buzz, that they get from hitting a certain metric, and they're like, I did it.
Yeah.
That doesn't give you any feedback. Or like, hey, I got a low number. Must have had too many beers last night.
Yeah.
Like, that is not an effective way to measure longevity. It's fun, and we're paying for, I guess, a gamification piece. That's not longevity. That's not increasing our long-term effect. But if you're using that data right and you're actually making genuine decisions about your day-to-day, that I think is very valid.
Yeah. I also think a pro and a con of being a researcher is that for every wellness trend, like before I buy something, I'll probably spend hours trying to figure out what's actually been found. Like, I wanted to get a red light mask, and I spent forever looking at research studies and specs trying to get the right wavelength. And I wanted a collagen powder, and I spent forever looking at the data trying to figure out if it actually worked, and if it did, what did I need to buy, and stuff like that. And I think some of these things do have real evidence. It's not going to replace the foundation, but I think there's, like you mentioned before, there's this like overwhelming more. I need to be doing 85 things. I'm not really going to look into any of them. And then I'm just going to hope it like band-aids all my other bad habits, where building a good foundation and picking like one or two wellness trends maybe that like you think are fun and have real evidence, and you're looking into them enough to like put your money in the right place, almost like it's something that's has a little bit more behind it, I think is going to go a much longer way than people saying I have, a 20-step skincare routine and then a like 3-hour wellness routine that's not really based in anything, and then get frustrated when they don't feel any better. I agree we're losing the plot a little bit in that space.
I just think most people are wasting their money.
Yeah.
I think across the board, most people are wasting their money chasing trends, chasing products, adding the next thing that they saw on TikTok. They're burning their pocketbook on hope when everything they probably want to do or should be doing is free. Yeah. 80% of the time, I feel very strongly about the 80-20 rule in this case. Yeah. And I think 80% of the time, most people could fix almost every issue they have for free.
Yeah, but it's just way less exciting. Cutting screens after sunset, like trying to get morning sunlight, drinking water, eating well. It has less of a ring to it. Electrolytes, yeah. But it's so important. And then when you do take supplements or do take kind of that extra step and of something a little more like newer and more exciting, I think the impact is probably a lot more effective than as a Band-Aid solution.
I agree.